are. And Jessica's with us. That is awesome. Okay, we're going to do part 2 today. We talked last time about managing money. I want us to talk about managing and budgeting. So last week we talked about how we have to grow up. Little children, they just need a little money as long as they have some money for candy or some pocket money. But they don't know how to plan. They don't know how to budget. They don't save. They don't have to pay for bills. So how they manage money and how we manage money as adults are two different things. And we also then looked about their thoughts about money and how they handle money and all of that. We looked at God being our provider. That He's the provider, not money, not a Mzungu. That God gives us work. He gives us the health and strength. But our security needs to be in the Lord, not in how much money we have. And we talked about how money can't buy happiness. We looked at a lot of scriptures about tithes and offerings, about how we need to give our 10% back to God to recognize that He owns everything and that we're trusting Him to provide. And then we give additional offerings as we're led to give. We looked at earning money, and we talked about how if you don't work, Kevin, you don't eat. Now, Kevin's eating, he's eating good because he's working hard. Okay, but if he wasn't working, he wouldn't be eating. Okay. We said that when you look at earning income, you need to look at how much your time is worth. Now, if you're doing things like baking, you also have to figure all the cost of your ingredients. Mercy A and I were talking about this the other day, that many people here in Nairobi, they think, oh, I'll bake these, let's say, chapatis, and I can sell them for 10 shillings each. Well, when you sell it for 10 shillings, you need to figure how much flour is in the chapati, how much oil is in the chapati, how much charcoal or gas or electric did you use cooking those chapatis, and how much was your time worth? Sometimes people are going out of business because they're selling their product for less than it actually cost because they haven't done their math. They don't know how much they bought to put into that and how much their time is worth. Mercy J, you're doing sewing. That's why we're having to keep track of how much did we spend on the thread? How much did we spend on the fabric? How much did we spend on the bias tape? All of the sewing things. And then if you're going to get paid for your time, that has to be added in to how much do you sell that apron for, right? So you have to do your math or you won't be earning income. You'll just be giving away stuff for free because you didn't figure it right. We talked about either doing casual labor or part-time work. We talked about having a career and then maybe even owning your own business. Or when you're older, having enough money then that you can retire and live the rest of your life without starving. Because you'll probably be too old to work then. We talked about planning and how we need to plan ahead. And I said that planning ahead is not trusting God. Some people think, oh, I'm not supposed to plan ahead. Now, Jesus did say, don't worry. He said, don't worry about what you're going to eat tomorrow, what you're going to do. We're not supposed to worry because He's our provider. But the Bible also talks about the ant. We looked at the ant and how the ant plans ahead. Another scripture I wanted to remind you about when you think about planning ahead. You remember Pharaoh had a dream, and he had a dream of 7 fat cows, really nice big fat cows. But in his dream, then 7 skinny cows came and ate the fat cows. And he didn't know the meaning of that dream. And that's how Joseph got out of prison, you remember, because Joseph was known for interpreting dreams. And when he interpreted Pharaoh's dream, he got out of jail and he became the second most powerful man in the world at that time. Because he had not only the ability to interpret the dreams, God had given Joseph wisdom as a manager. We talked about being a good steward or a manager. And what we talked about last time in all of this was about how you manage your money. Are you smart or not smart? Do you plan ahead, or are you just spending money and then you don't have it? And so God gave wisdom to Joseph, not only for himself, but he saved that entire nation. They would have all died. They would have all starved to death. If during their 7 years of plenty that were symbolized by the 7 fat cows, if they had just said, wow, we've got lots of food, and they ate it all, then when the skinny cows came, they would have all died. And not only would everyone in Egypt have died, but in the surrounding countries. Because when the famine came, which was symbolized by the skinny cows, then many other nations came to Egypt and bought the grain because of Joseph's wisdom. Joseph said, hey, we're going to get, God is telling us, he's warning us that during these 7 years of plenty, let's only eat part of it. Let's save a lot of it. And then when the skinny cows come, when the 7 years of famine, no rain, no new crops, everything's dying and withering, we'll still have plenty of grain saved for those 7 years. And so it saved Egypt, it saved the surrounding nations, and that's even, then you remember the story of how that's how Joseph got reunited with his family, because his family even came looking for food. And so the same thing happens in our lives, where we have years where maybe we're strong, we're healthy, we can work hard, we need to save, because we talked about, Jesus said, build your house on the rock. The rain's going to come, the wind's going to blow. He said, in this world you'll have tribulation. When the tribulation comes, ladies, maybe it's when your husband dies and now you're a widow. Maybe you lose your health. Maybe you get hurt in a matatu accident. You're not able to work. What have you saved from the fat cows for when the skinny cows are coming? Even those of you in school know that, like during the holidays, you can work, you can make money, because once you go back to school, the skinny cows have come, and the skinny cows are going to eat those fat cows, okay? So we need to be wise. We need to be wise like Joseph. Again, it's not that we're not trusting God. Joseph was trusting God, But God gives wisdom. That's why we need to be like the ant, where we plan ahead for those hard times. And then we also looked at not going into debt, not being a slave to the person who is lending us money, not having to always go and beg from other people, certainly not getting into debt with loan sharks or M-Pesa or credit cards. We need to spend, again, if we're saving and if we're planning ahead, we're not even going to spend all that we make. We're sure not going to spend more than we make. If you spend more than you're earning, you're going to be in debt. I mean, you're spending money you don't have. So you will be in debt. You will be like a slave. If you are spending all that you make, you won't be in debt, at least not right this minute. But you're eating all of your seed. You're eating everything that you have. Then you have nothing to plant. You have nothing for the future. You have nothing if there's a problem. If you spend less than you earn, then you're able to be saving some money and planning ahead for those skinny cows. Okay, then we talked about spending. And we talked about following your budget, not impulse buying, being careful again that our lifestyle is not here when our income is here. Again, you can't have a lifestyle. You can't say, well, I want to own my own home. I want to buy a car. I want to go out and buy a lot of fancy clothes. If you don't have that money, you can't do it. And let me just remind you that it doesn't matter how much money you have. Someone has done a survey of people who have won the lotto. You know what the lotto is? Where you buy a ticket, and then if you win it, you win like 1,000,000 shillings. Okay. They did a study about people who have won the lotto in this country, in America. And what they found is that people who won it, in less than a year, they're poor again. They're poor again. Maybe they won millions of shillings worth, but they're poor again. Well, why? Well, because they spent it all. They did not plan ahead. That money could have lasted them many years. That money they could have invested, maybe bought one of those apartments we were talking about, where you can have passive income, where the money's always coming. But they didn't do that. Instead, they went out, they were spending money, they were buying things, and then the money was all gone. Here's an article I saw in the newspaper about one of the legends in Manchester United. Those of you who are big sports fans have probably heard of Dwight York. He was filing for bankruptcy. Bankruptcy is when you're so in debt you can't pay your debts. You can't ever pay your debts. He had spent 5.8 billion shillings. You know, when he was playing for Manchester United, he was making lots of money. But if you're spending more money than you're making, it runs out. So it doesn't matter how much you have. If you have 1,000,000 shillings, and you think, I am rich, I have 1,000,000 shillings. But if you spend 2,000,000 shillings, you're still in debt. And you have spent all the money that you had. right? So, this is why we have to keep our spending under control. Okay, so all of that was just really a review of what we talked about last time. So, let's look at your scripture study, because one of the very other important things when we talk about money and how we look at money is honesty with money, being honest with money. So, Kevin, what was a favorite verse you had? And speak up nice and loud for the video.
Okay, it was from Matthew 22, verse 17 to 21.
Okay.
It says, give to God what rightly belongs to Him, and Caesar what belongs to Him.
Okay. And do you know why that verse is here under honesty? Because if we don't give to God what belongs to Him, and if we don't give to Caesar what belongs to him, we're stealing. We're stealing from God, and we're stealing from the government. And let me tell you, you can get into big, big trouble with the government if you lie and keep the government's money. You can go to prison. But if you steal from God, that's even worse, okay? You're in really big trouble. So our honesty really starts with God and the government. You may say, hey, nobody will know. If you keep your tithe and you don't give it, do I know? No, I don't know. Your friends don't know. Your family may not know, but you know what? God knows. So we need to start by being honest with God, the government, and then with other people too. Okay, Mercy J, what about you? What was a verse you liked?
Okay. Deuteronomy 16:19.
Deuteronomy 16:19.
Yeah. Then 27 verse 25, it says, "Thus is the man who accepts a bribe to kill innocent person."
Okay, so that's a bribe is bad, right? But a bribe to kill somebody? But you know what? People do that. If you pay them a bribe, they will lie, they will steal, they will even kill for you. So I would suggest to you that you don't take a bribe to do bad things. But for me, Dr. Leslie, we will not pay a bribe. We will not. Since we have been in Kenya, we will not. And you know, when you go to do something, go to do business, sometimes they'll say, hey, I could make this go faster for you. I could make this easier for you. I could help you. We know what that means. We say, no, I'm not paying money. Because that person is trying to lie or steal, or they're offering to do something bad. Maybe they're going to lie on the paperwork. And I understand that corruption is a big, big problem here. We'll talk more about that in a minute. Okay, Jessica, what about you?
Mine was Proverbs 15, verse 27. Those who hate bribe will live.
Okay, those who hate bribes will live. I'm going to live. I'm going to live because I hate bribes. Yes. Okay. Well, what does it mean to be honest with money? Well, first of all, it means that you're trustworthy, that you're truthful, and that you're a good steward. So let's say that I need, and this happens every week, I think, but very often, Mercy J needs to go to the market. And so sometimes I give her money, sometimes Miss Polly gives her money to go and buy the food. Now, we're trusting Mercy Joe. We are believing that she's going to tell us the truth. If I say, how much did the carrots cost? And she says 20 shillings, she's telling the truth that the carrots cost 20 shillings. They didn't cost 10 shillings and then she put the other 10 in her pocket, right? That we can trust you, that you're a good steward. You know, it's amazing here in Kenya, the problems that people have with workers. Whether it's a house girl working in the house who maybe is stealing money or stealing food or stealing jewelry, things like that. Sometimes it's workers, let's say, Kevin, with construction. Maybe they're supposed to be building something, but they steal the djembe and they steal the hammer and they take that home so that now they'll have it at home. And then at work they go, I don't know where it went. It was here yesterday. I don't know what happened to it. They stole it. They stole it. They're not, you can't trust them. Even in many of these estates where there are security guards, there's always a problem trusting the security guards because the security guards are there to keep us secure, right? But where we lived before, and I have heard newspaper stories and stories on TV and other people sharing, one of our favorite guards where we lived before, he was so nice. He was so friendly. We began to have the apartments began to be burglarized. Somebody was breaking in to the apartments when nobody was there and was stealing stuff. And we thought, who is doing this? We have a guard at the gate. Who could get past the guard? Who could come in here? And we kept trying to figure it out. It was the favorite guard. It was the nice guard. He knew when people left and he was going and stealing their things. So again, we need to be the kind of person that can be trusted. You know, people who are dishonest, who steal, they think, hey, I'm going to get away with it. Nobody's going to know. Nobody's going to find out. But again, God sees. And the Bible says, be sure your sin will find you out. Eventually, you will get caught. And then you'll be in jail. You'll be put in prison. But also, when we are honest, just like the verse Jessica read, when you're honest, you're going to live. You're going to be blessed. And especially when the boss finds out he or she can trust you, you're going to be promoted. You're going to be the one they say, here, you can have the keys. Here, you take care of this money. Hey, I'm going to make you a manager. Because you have proven that you will tell the truth. So, we don't do bribes. You don't do corruption. And I know that's difficult here in Kenya where even the police take bribes. Again, a security guard who is not keeping you secure is about as good as a policeman who is taking bribes. I mean, it's like, these are the people that are supposed to be honest. These are the people you're supposed to be able to trust. So I know it's hard. I know that if you're driving and your car gets pulled over and the policeman says, I'm going to give you a ticket, I'm going to give you a fine, you're going to have to do this, you're going to have to pay that. It's easier to give him a little money so he'll just let you go. But it's not right. It's not right. Again, the Bible says a lot about the love of money. It says the love of money is a root of all evil. When you start loving money more than honesty. When you start wanting money more than you want God, when you start loving money and seeking money and wanting money more than doing what's right, your own soul, your own heart is being corrupted. It's bad enough that corruption is in the society or in the government. You don't want your own heart, your own soul corrupted. You want to be able to say, God, you know, I tell the truth. If I'm told to go get milk for 70 shillings, I go get the milk for 70 shillings. And I understand that here in Kenya, I understand that it's common. It's considered normal practice to do something else with the money. Let's say that I give Jessica 100 shillings. And I say, Jessica, go to the store for me and get some flour and some salt. And she's on the way to the market, but she meets her friend. And her friend says, Jessica, my mother just died. And now we're going to have the funeral. Can you give me some money, please? There are many, 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 many Kenyans who would reach in their pocket and say, yes, I have 100 shillings. Here, you can have it. And she just gave away. Did she give away her money? No, she just gave away my money. And then she's going to come back and I'm going to say, where's the flour? Where's the salt? Well, my friend needed the money, so I gave it to them. No. If you want to give them your money, that's your decision. But you don't give away my money. So again, we have to be able to be trusted by other people and by God. So I want you to ask yourself the question, can people trust you? Can your parents trust you with money? Can your husband or wife trust you with money? This just boggles my mind. A lot of husbands and wives hide money from each other here in Kenya. Let me tell you what, if you marry somebody, a man who is going to take the money and get drunk, if he's going to take the money and spend it on other women, if he's going to take the money and go do what he wants to do, and then when you and the children need food, and you need rent, and you need school fees, he says, oh, I spent the money. Don't marry that kind of man. You can't trust him. If you can't trust him with money, don't trust him with your life. Don't marry him. Men, if you are going to marry a woman and you're not sure you're going to be able to trust her with money, if you bring home the money from your hard week of work, and you think this woman is going to go out and she's going to buy dresses and she's going to go get her hair done and she's going to do all this, and then we're not going to have any food and the kids aren't going to be taken care of, don't marry that woman. Money represents a lot. It really represents a lot. A lot more than just this paper. It really shows our heart. It really reveals our heart and what we do love. So, yes, the culture may be dishonest. And let me just list several issues that I know are a problem here in Kenya that have to do with being honest with money. First of all, restitution. Do you know what restitution means? Restitution means let's say that Jerry borrows one of my pans for school to do cooking. And when he's taking that pan to school, somebody steals it. Well, Jerry is supposed to buy me a new pan. I'm sorry that it got stolen from him, but when he borrowed it from me, he was saying, I am responsible for this that you're borrowing to me, that you're loaning to me, and I'm going to give it back to you. If you borrow somebody's goat, the Bible says a lot about if you borrow somebody's donkey, if you take their cow, and something happens to it, guess what? You owe them another cow. Or you have to buy them another donkey. You don't go, pull it. I'm sorry. It fell in the ditch and it died. It got hit by the car and it died. No. You borrowed that cow saying that you would bring it back. And now you owe it. So restitution means that if something happens to something you've borrowed, so now we're not talking about money, we're talking about maybe you borrowed a pan, you borrowed a knife, you borrowed a hammer, you borrowed a djembe, whatever we're always taking the ladders back and forth, right? Actually, both of those ladders belong to the landlord. She leaves them here most of the time, Kevin, because we're the ones usually using them, but they're really hers. And if something happened that they got destroyed, she will expect me to buy new ladders for her. That's how it works, okay? And let me just suggest to you that if you're afraid that, this is something really expensive, how could I, if I borrow somebody's car and I crash it, I will have to buy them a new car. Now, I'll tell you, I don't even have money for a car. So I really don't have money to buy them a new car, okay? So if I can't buy them a new car, if something happens, I'm not going to borrow their car. I am not going to borrow it. If you borrow somebody's computer, this is a popular thing now. If you borrow somebody's computer and something happens, water gets spilled in it, it gets dropped, it gets stolen, guess what? You owe that person a new computer. If you borrowed their phone and something happens to it, you need to buy them a new phone. That's restitution. And the Bible says a lot about restitution. Again, if money is lost, maybe I give Kevin 2,000 shillings to go to the market to buy something, and it falls out of his pocket. Or he doesn't know. He doesn't know. Maybe it fell off. Maybe somebody stole it. He doesn't know. But he gets there, he checks his pocket, no money. Then, Kevin, you would need to repay me 2,000 shillings. This is how we keep things honest. God holds us accountable. There's a principle. God holds us accountable. You read the parables that Jesus told where the master called the steward and says, okay, now it's the time for accounting. Where's the money I gave you? What did you do with it? What happened to it? And if you remember in those parables, that it wasn't even good enough that they said, hey, I have it all right here. Here's the money you gave me, and I have it. The master says, no, that's not good enough. You were supposed to have made money with it. Where's the extra money you made? Oh, well, I didn't make any money. You know what? I was afraid. So I went and dug a hole in the backyard, and I put the money in there so nothing would happen to it. So I had it for you. And the master goes, no, you were supposed to do business with it. You were supposed to make money. It was supposed to be increased. So we need to be accountable. Very commonly here in Kenya, honesty, service to other people, even morality, are subverted for private interests. So if I need the money, if I'm in debt, if my mother is sick, then you know what? It's okay for me to steal from my employer. It's okay for me to take money from somebody else. It's okay for me to lie. It's okay. No, that is not right. But many people, and that's why there's so much corruption. That's why there's so much corruption in the country. Because the people in power, or even poor people, so it can be the very rich, it can be the poor, it can be everybody in between. But if you have a private interest, something you really want, then many Kenyans say to themselves, it's okay to not be honest. It's okay to not give the service I was supposed to give. It's okay to lie. It's okay to steal. It's okay to have sex with somebody because I have this need. And this is more important than anything else. No. Many people believe that, but that's not what the Bible says. Do you remember when the king wanted the Hebrew men to bow down and worship him and say that he was God? And he said, if anybody doesn't bow down, I'm going to throw you in the fire. There's a lot of people who say that they're Christians, who say, well, I'm going to get thrown in the fire, so it's okay to bow down. It's okay. I'm just going to say he's God. I know he's not God, but I'm going to bow down to him so I won't die, so I won't get thrown in the fire. Is that what they did? No. They said, you can throw us in the fire if you want, but we will not bow down to you, and we will not say that you are God. So he threw him in the fire. Now, God worked a miracle. It says that there was one that looked like the Son of God who was with them in the fire, and they didn't get burned up. But you know what? They said, whether we die or not, we are not going to do what's wrong. And that needs to be our attitude. You can tell me you're going to throw me in jail. You can threaten my life. I don't care what you do. I am not going to sin against God. So I am going to be honest. I'm going to do the job I was given to do. And I'm going to be faithful to God and not sin. And I'm going to trust God with it. I'm going to trust God with my private interests. I'm going to trust God as my provider. I'm not going to do bad things to provide for myself. You see, we don't see it that way often when it's happening. But when I said we have to be grounded in the idea that God is our provider. I'm not going to provide for myself. I'm not going to be a prostitute to provide for myself. I'm not going to kill somebody else to provide for myself. I'm not going to steal from somebody else to provide for myself. I'm not going to lie to somebody to provide for myself. I'm going to trust God as my provider, and I'm going to do what's right. That has to be our heart if we're really honest with money. Okay, now you also looked at scriptures on wealth and inheritance, God blessing you with maybe some money or possessions that are given to you. Let's start with Mercy J this time. Mercy J, what was a favorite verse you had on wealth or inheritance?
Okay, Proverbs 13 verse 22, it says, a good man leaves an inheritance for his grandchildren.
Okay, a good man will leave an inheritance. Now, think about that. He's able to leave an inheritance because he saved that money. Again, if he spent everything that he got during his life, then when he dies, there's nothing left, right? But instead, he was wise, he planned ahead, he saved, and now there's even something that he can leave to his children and grandchildren. You know, we're here because there were several people. My mother, that we have named Nana's house after, when she passed away, we got a lot of furniture and things that now we could make Nana's house with. And then even the educational fund. Now, some of you have sponsors. None of you have a sponsor that gives all the money that you need for schooling. Nobody has a sponsor that's paying for all of it. So then who gives that other money? Well, my grandfather. Do you know that my grandfather died almost 50 years ago? That's a long time to be dead. Okay, he died almost 50 years ago, but he left money in a fund. Not just, he left money to his children and his grandchildren, but he also left money in an educational fund. And that is what is paying for your schooling and the money that you need. What if he hadn't done that? We wouldn't be here, would we? So it is a blessing. Jessica, what about a verse from you?
For me, it was under wealth. I had two that I really
Okay.
First one was Luke 16, 10 to 13, which says, we cannot serve both God and money.
Okay, that we've I hope that's becoming clear. You can't serve God and money. If you love the money more, you're going to do all kinds of things to serve the money, right? Okay.
And also Romans 1:29, we should not be greedy and corrupt for material gain.
Okay, same thing. We shouldn't be corrupt or greedy for the material gain. That's really what I was saying. You're selling your soul so that you can get some things. But you've corrupted your heart. Okay, Kevin, what about you?
It's from Ephesians 5:3. Greed in acquiring wealth is unholy in God, and also acquiring it in an improper time.
Okay, getting it in an improper way or an improper time, really. Yeah. You know, sometimes we want it right now. I want it, and I want it now. I don't want to work and save pulley. You know, one thing that came up this week is that Mercy A wants to buy her own oven. They have ovens at school that are about the size of the microwave, my big microwave. So it's about this big, but she can bake her cakes in it. And she says it'll bake her cakes better than my big oven. And she wants to buy that. And we talked about it. At first I was like, no, don't buy it. But she explained to me why she wants to buy it. And you know what? She has saved up enough money to buy it. So that is great. You know, sometimes though we want something right now. And that's when we usually get into trouble with either going into debt, borrowing the money, stealing the money, or because I want it right now. She has saved. She's been working. And she's been saving money, putting it in her savings envelope. We're going to talk about the envelopes in a few minutes. She's been putting it pulley in her envelope. Now she has enough money to buy it. She wasn't even saving for that. She had said she was saving for a computer. But she's decided, you know what? She needs that oven more than she needs a computer. So that's exactly what Kevin's verse is talking about, that she did it the right way and at the proper time. At the right time. Okay. Let me just say one more thing. Let me tell you one story real quick. That same grandfather that I was talking about, who left the money that you guys are enjoying and being blessed with, when he died, the IRS in America, which is like the KRA here, they said that money needed to be taxed. But he had already paid taxes on that money. So it was not supposed to be taxed. But you know, when you get in an argument with the government, it's a big problem. So they had to get lawyers and they went to court and they fought over that money. And do you know they fought over that money, I'm pretty sure it was 13 years. 12 or 13 years they fought over that money. In the end, we won the law case. Now when I say we, I wasn't fighting them. It was the estate, and it was for all the children and grandchildren that were fighting the government. And so finally the court ruled that no, the taxes had been paid. We had given to Caesar what belonged to Caesar, but Caesar couldn't get it twice. So once was enough for Caesar. So Dr. Les and he was going to school. We had 4 children to support, and we were really needing money. Some people were giving us a little money. He was working and making a little money, but we needed more money. And so I didn't even know that the law case had been settled. And when the law case was settled, not only did the government have to give that money back, but because they had been fighting in court for 12 or 13 years, they had to pay the interest. We talked last time about interest. They had to pay the interest because they had kept that money all that time. That's a long time to keep somebody else's money, right? 12 or 13 years. So one day I went to the mailbox. In the U.S., you could walk out to your front yard and there was a mailbox and you could get your mail. You didn't have to go all the way down to the post office. So I went out there to get the mail, and there was a letter, and when I opened it, there was a check for 1 million shillings. 1 million. Of course, it was in American dollars. It was $10,000, but that's 1 million shillings. And that was not the money from my trust. That was the interest that the government had to pay just me. They had to pay all the other people too, but they had to give me 1 million shillings for keeping that money for 12 or 13 years. But you see how God blessed. He blessed us with that money. He's blessed you with that money because it came from an inheritance. It came from an inheritance. That's a real blessing. So, when you study those verses on wealth and inheritance, I hope it encourages you like it encourages me to not spend all the money that I have. For so many years, Dr. Les and I were so poor. Now, we weren't poor like you guys think of poor, but we were considered, in the U.S., we were considered poor. And so we barely had enough money to live, to pay school fees, to eat, all of those things, that we weren't saving money. We were not saving money. And so if I had died, if he had died, if both of us had died, I can tell you, our kids would have gotten zero. They would have gotten zero. But now God has blessed. And one of the things that we're having to think about with the money that we have, with the things here in the house, is what will happen to it when we die. One thing that's very sad, I think it's very sad here in Kenya too, this is another thing that upsets me, is that when somebody dies, whichever relative, I guess, lives the closest, or they go in and they just take everything they can take. That is not right. That's stealing. That is stealing. Because that person that died, the things maybe need to go, if they have children, those things need to go to their children. Some of you orphans that are staying here, when your parents died, somebody came in and took everything, and you were left with nothing. That's stealing. And stealing from an orphan? Oh my gosh, do you know what the Bible says about that? It's bad enough to steal, but if you steal from an orphan, you're in trouble with God. So we want to write it down, like my grandfather wrote it down, of who gets what money, who gets these things, where will these things go when we die, so that it's a blessing to everybody. It's not a blessing to a thief who comes in and just takes, but it's a blessing to our children, our grandchildren, you guys. So think about that for yourselves, especially as God blesses. Wealth and inheritance can be a blessing or it can be a curse. And I think some of those verses you read, again, if you're doing evil for money, if you're loving money, if you're trusting in the money, it becomes a curse to you. It's not a blessing. I have really wanted the things that Les's mother and father and my mother and father left us to be a blessing. And not just a blessing to us, but a blessing to you, a blessing to others. When God blesses you, if you study blessing in the Bible, just study the word blessing. He doesn't bless you so that you can just say, I'm blessed. Ha! I got lots of stuff. What if I was doing that? What if I was in America now just thanking God for the money and the stuff that I got? Would you be blessed? No. You see, when you're somebody that God can trust, He can bless you to be a blessing. See, I've been blessed, and now I want others to be blessed. That's the kind of heart God wants us to have. that we're not just taking, we're giving. So God knows that when He gives to us, we're going to bless others too. Again, it goes back to the idea of being a good steward, especially if you think about it. When you get wealth, when you get an inheritance, you're being given money you didn't even work for. You're being blessed with money that wasn't even yours. It was somebody else's. But now you're being blessed. Are you going to be a good steward? Are you going to take care of that money? I know you guys think sometimes I may be kind of hard because you may ask me for something and I go, well, let's pray about that. Let's think about that. Because if I just give money every time you ask for money, all the money will be gone. And then what will we do? Right? So we have to be wise. We have to say, okay, I can give you this much. Or let's wait and see. Let's pray. And so we have to be good stewards of the money. And let me say that even if Kevin, someday if you're rich, if you have billions of shillings, you still need a budget. Because you know what? You still need to tell your money where to go. This guy was blessed with billions. And you know what? He did not tell his money where to go. It just went. It just went. And now it's all gone and he doesn't have anything. So even when we're blessed with a lot, remember what Jesus said. If you're faithful in little, I'll give you more. So if we've been given more, we need to be even more faithful with what He's given us. So we still need a budget. Still need a budget. I have known rich people. They were rich. Some of them in my family who were rich. But you know what? They didn't take care of the money. If they wanted something, they just go out and buy it. If you ask them, well, how much are you spending on food? I don't know. I just buy whatever I want for food and we eat. Well, how much do you spend on a new car? I don't know. I just go out and buy it. Guess what? Before long, the well runs dry. There's no more money because you weren't being a good steward of it. You weren't taking care of it. You weren't telling your money where to go, and you weren't planning ahead. You weren't saving. Then it's all gone. Okay, I want to talk about one other thing before we talk about budgeting. I want to talk about some tips, some practical tips about money and marriage. Now, I know that some of you are not married, so you can file this away in the back of your brain for when you do get married. But it's very important to discuss money and management before you get married. And it's also, that's another reason why it's important to know someone for a while. You don't just meet somebody and go out and marry them next week. You need to see, how do they handle their money? Girls, if you're looking at a man, how is he managing his money? Does he have a budget? What's he doing with the money he makes? Is he working? If he's not working before you marry, he won't be working after you marry, okay? So, and same thing for men. If you're looking at a girl, what is she doing with her money? If she's working, is she saving? What is she doing? Because again, you see a lot about somebody's heart. You don't want to marry somebody who's stealing from God. You don't want to marry somebody who's stealing from the government. You don't want to marry somebody who's lying to their employer and they may get sacked next week. You don't want to marry somebody, if they have a corrupt heart about money, their heart is probably corrupt about everything else too. So, but this issue of money, you need to see how they're handling it, and then you need to talk about it. One of the things we talk about in premarital counseling that Dr. Les and I do is get couples to talk about this so that they find out if they're on the same wavelength or not. Because a major, in fact, it's called the number one. The number one reason for separation and divorce in the world is money. Money. Fighting over money, money not being provided, them saying they're going to give you money, they don't give you money. I mean, you're hiding money from each other. You're not being honest because you can't trust each other. Well, there you go. Now, you need to realize, are you a saver or a spender? Again, we all need to save some, and we're all going to have to spend. But usually in a marriage, just like we talk about how there's different personalities in marriage, usually one of the people is more of a saver and the other one's more of a spender. Now, Dr. Les is good about saving. He follows the financial planning advice from Dave Ramsey. He has saved a lot of money. But when it comes to just kind of how we handle money, I can tell you, I'm the saver, he's the spender. And we understand that about each other. Because I save every little thing. You can ask Mercy J. Every little piece of lace, I figure I can do something with it, okay? I don't throw away food. I do not throw away. You can make soup or something with it. You do not throw away. So I save every little thing. And I'll say, so I'm probably, in a week, and I go to the grocery store. We talked about how I buy the bargains. So probably in a week, I may save 100 shillings. Because I've saved 1 shilling on this, 1 shilling. I go through the house and I say, turn those lights off. Nobody's in this room. Turn those lights off. That's costing money. So I'm saving 1 shilling here and 1 shilling there. And then Dr. Les says, you know what? We need a new computer. And do you know how much a computer costs? The computer costs way more than those shillings I've saved. When he doesn't buy much, but anything he buys costs a lot of money because it's usually a computer. So, but see, we agree on that. Let me just say that one of the essential things when we're talking about this is couples need to make a budget together. If you make the budget together, you're agreeing on where the money's going to go. If the husband's controlling all the money and the wife can't get any money, that's when she starts hiding it. Okay? Because the husband he's got the money here and he won't give her any. Well, why not? Well, he wants to go spend it on beer. She's trying to feed the children, But if you agree on the budget, and then I take the money I make, and he takes the money he makes, and we put it together in the bank, and I'm not stealing from it, and he's not stealing from it, we've agreed on how the money's going to be spent. Then, that won't happen. Okay, now here's a common lie, not just in Kenya, but in many places, that husbands should control all the money. That's a lie. The truth is that we need to plan and agree together. The Bible says when you get married, you become one flesh. You're doing things together. And then both people have to be faithful in their spending. So, Dr. Les pays for some things. I pay for some things. He has so much money for the rent, so much money for the electric, so much money for paying for the water. He gives me so much money for paying for the food. When we had a car in the U.S., then there would be money set aside for the car. But we both have to be faithful in spending what we've agreed and budgeted together. Here's another lie, that the husband must be the record keeper and the bill payer. There is nothing in the Bible that says he has to do that. The truth is that whoever's better at numbers. Now, in our case, you guys know, heaven knows, I am not good with numbers. Oh my gosh. Do you know, we got married and we had a joint banking account. And of course, my husband had been in banking, so he knew how to budget and how to keep the records and how to account for everything. He gave me a checkbook. Kevin, we've been married almost 50 years. Do you know how long I got to keep the checkbook? 2 weeks. 2 weeks. And I had so messed up the checkbook in there. He said, no, never, no. So, yeah, I'm not going to be the one keeping the records. So he's better at the numbers. I don't know that he has more time. I probably have more time, but he knows the numbers, and he keeps it all organized. And bless his heart, now not only does he have to keep our money, that's another point. Let me say this. Here in Kenya, another problem that Kenyans have is, let's say that this is the money I got paid for my job this week. I got paid this much. And this is the money that I made on the sewing business. So I just put all this together. And now I have all this to spend. Well, if you do that, you won't have a sewing business very long, because you will eat all of this money. Then when you need to go buy more fabric, I don't have. Well, why not? Well, you ate it. If you have, we have so many accounts. There's our personal money, the money for us. Okay. Then there's the money for you guys. And even that is broken into different accounts and budgets, because Kevin's school fees and everything costs one thing, and Mercy's is another, and Jessica's is. So then there's accounts. He has an account for each one of you, okay, within the orphan money. And there's the medical, how the medical's made. So then that's another account. And then we have Skimmy in the USA, which is a NGO in America. And then we have Skimmy Kenya, which is like an NGO. It's a society here in Kenya. And so it has, and all that has to be in separate accounts. There is a record for what we spend our money on. And there's a record for how much we spend on each of you kids in that educational fund. And then every year we have to give an accounting to the United States government on Skimmy. And we have to give an account to Kenya about Skimmy Kenya. And so we can't just take all the money. We can't just take all the money and go, wow, we're rich. We can spend it all. No. So it has to be organized. You have to keep records. And whoever's better at numbers has to do that. I don't even know how he keeps track of all those different accounts. He has computer things. Now, let me say this. In this modern age, if you want to know, you want something that helps to make it easy for you to budget and to keep track of your money, there's all kinds of apps that you can put right on your phone, so that when you're at the store, you can just type it in, okay? And it'll help you to keep your records. Lots of articles and helps and courses that are on the internet. I'm hitting a few of the high spots, guys. This is not a thorough training. We actually went through a thorough training by Dave Ramsey, and he has videos teaching you all about how to manage your money and how to plan ahead and everything. We did that one. But there's ones that are free on the internet that you can look at. Again, Dave Ramsey, he's like the leading Christian financial planner in the world. So he really helps Christians. But whether it's Christian or non-Christian, there's all kinds of things to help you learn how to manage your money and how to budget. So let's go to it. You've all been given a sheet there. Take your sheet out for making a budget, because we've said a budget is telling your money where to go, or it just disappears. It just, sometimes you go, what did I spend that money on? I don't know. Where did it go? So you need to tell it where to go. Now, I have found that one of the easiest ways, this is actually one of Dave Ramsey's suggested budgets. I don't know. Again, you might have to adjust costs here in Kenya, because he's mainly talking in the U.S. But however much money you make, he says that you should plan to spend about 25% on your housing, so rent. 10% on transportation. Now again, depending on where you live, where you work, how far you have to ride a bus or a matatu, but that gives you an idea. So however much money you make, there's kind of a big question mark here in the middle, but however much you make, if you take 25% for your rent, 10% for transportation, he says 5 to 10% for health, so NHIF or buying Panadol or whatever, going to the doctor. Utilities, so water, electric should be about 5 to 10%. Food, 10 to 15%. He recommends saving 10%. Of course, your giving is 10%. Miscellaneous is 5 to 10. So, it might be that you have a dog, so you've got to buy dog food or cat food, or, it might be that you have something maybe that doesn't fit in one of these other categories. 5 to 10% on personal. Personal would be your hair, clothes, soap, toothpaste. All that personal stuff that you use. Recreation, 5 to 10%, so you can go to the movies or buy a Coke or something. Now, most people here in Kenya do not buy insurance. If you're going to buy insurance, it might be, if you own a car, you have to have insurance on the car. If you own a house, you're going to have insurance on that house. You can buy private health insurance. Dr. Les and I buy private insurance here in Kenya. So we pay money so that if we get sick, if we are in the hospital, that's taken care of. And it pays a lot more than NHIF. Of course, it costs a lot more than NHIF. So, but this gives you an idea. And on your budget sheet then, you've got an idea. I have put there basic categories that, again, kind of the average person, especially the average person here in Kenya, has to, may need to spend money on. So you've got all kinds of categories there. Now, what I want you to do is I want you to think about Now, this changes over time, right? Because what you may put down here now, it may be totally different in a year or 2 years or 5 years. So a budget you need to review and redo every so often, or when your situation changes. When your situation changes, okay? So if you start working a new job, if you lose your job, if you move somewhere different, then you're going to have to adjust your budget to fit your new living situation, okay? But right now, what I want you to think about is up here at the top, it has several places for income, because you may get income from different sources. For instance, Mercy Jo, she works and she gets paid every week. And so you could write down, this is the amount of money that you get about every week. It may be a few shillings more or a few shillings less, but you know how much you make. And you also have a second job because you get paid for sewing. Now the sewing money is more unpredictable because if you sell something, you make more money. If you don't, then that's zero. So that one's kind of hard to count on. So what you need to do is, if you are in a situation like Mercy J, you can only budget based on the money you know is coming in. I think most of the money she makes from the sewing, she puts in her savings envelope because she hasn't banked on that. She hasn't counted on that. She can only count on what she's making every week from her regular job. Now you can save up then the other money and buy or pay for something you need. But you can't, again, you can't spend it if you don't have it, right? Okay. Now, what I want you all to put down then is your income, and then I want you to go down and begin to put how much money do you spend for the things on this list. Okay? Do it. Take your pen. Do you have a pen, Kevin? Yeah, okay. So, if you make this much money, what's 10% that you give to God? Do you give additional offerings? Now, those of you who live here, just to help you be grateful and thankful, where it says rent, you can put 0 because you're not having to pay rent. Where it says electrical, Jessica, how much do you pay for electricity? 0, okay. How about water? Mercy J, how much do you pay for water? 0, okay. Now, your groceries, you are paying 100 shillings a day. You are paying 100 shillings a day. Those of you who are here full-time, you're paying 700 shillings a week. Kevin, I'm paying for yours. Jessica, I'm paying for yours. So, okay, if you're not having to pay for it, you can put 0 again. Poor Mercy J, she has to put 700 down for the week. Okay. How much are you having to pay for the phone or internet? Okay, now you're not having to pay for the internet, but you guys, you like phone time, right? So how much, again, tell your money where to go. Are you going to tell your money, okay, I'm going to spend 50 shillings a week on the phone, or I'm going to spend 100 shillings a week on the phone? How much are you going to spend? Tell your money where to go and put down how many shillings you're going to spend on the phone, on phone minutes. If you're paying NHIF, you're spending 125 a week, I can tell you, on NHIF. What about toiletries? Toiletries are what I named some of this personal stuff here. So like if you're buying lotion, toothpaste, soap, stuff for your hair, any kind of personal toiletries, perfume, deodorant, lipstick, any of that, that's toiletry. And again, you've got to decide. One person may say, oh my gosh, I have to have that. I spend 500 shillings a week on that. Somebody else is going to go, I spend 50 shillings a week, So it just depends on what you need. If you're still in school, you can put 0 because mama pays for it all, right? Okay, what about any other fees? Do you have any kind of fees you have to pay for anything? Could be fees for a library fee or whatever. Okay, then the next set of things are school fees. How much are you having to pay for school fees? Do you have to pay for extra tuition? What about your supplies and your books? Now, those of you here at Nina's house, you can put 0, 0, 0. But imagine if you weren't here and you were having to find those school fees or pay for all those books. What about savings? You need to tell your money where to go. How much money are you going to try to save every week? So you are not spending everything you're making. You are saving. You might be saving for Christmas to buy Christmas presents. You might be saving to buy birthday gifts for somebody. You might be saving to buy a new phone. You might be saving to buy a special dress. All kinds of things we can save for. But if you save just even a little bit, and he's suggesting 10%. So if you make $2,000 in a week, take $200, save it. What about money for family? Now, I know that some of you may not have any family that you're giving money to, but this is a big thing here in Kenya. I'm not saying you don't help your family, because I know that's a high value. But if it's a high value to you, if you want to be able to give money to your mother, your father, your sister, your brother, your uncle, your cousin, whoever comes begging for money, you're going to need to budget that money. You can't give them your food money. You can't give them your rent money. You can't give them the school fees money. You better have budgeted money to give away as a gift. We talked about that. You know they're not going to pay you back, so don't call it a loan. Just give the money to them. Even if it's 50 shillings. What about your hair? How much do you spend on hair? Clothes, entertainment, gifts, eating out. Let me just remind you that and you'll see that I've kind of set some of these apart into categories. Those are extras, guys. You're not going to die if your hair does not get done. You're not going to die if you don't get some new clothes. You're certainly not going to die if you don't have entertainment. Giving gifts to other people is a really nice thing to do. Eating out is not a necessity. If you eat home, I guarantee it will be a tiny part. In fact, we're going through this now with the kids that have gone back to school. Because if you eat lunch here, you guys are spending 30 shillings for lunch. Out of that 100, we figure breakfast is 20 shillings, lunch is 30 shillings, dinner's 50 shillings. Dinner's the big meal, okay? So you're spending 30 shillings. Do you know what I have to pay for the kids that are going to school to eat at school, the cheapest food they can find is 100 shillings. That's not 100 shillings for their food for all day. That's 100 shillings to get just something small for lunch. So when you eat out, it's always more expensive than eating at home. Then you've got some other things down here at the bottom that again may apply to some of you, but if you have a car, what is the car costing you? What's it costing for car repairs? What's it costing for gasoline, for fuel? What's it costing for your children? What's it costing for the needs of your children? When you have children, it increases this a lot, okay? I had 4 children. They all were hungry. They wanted food. They needed clothes. They needed medical. They needed school. But this will help you to see. Now, here's the thing. I should have said this at the beginning. You notice that there's also a place for receive date and a due date. You know, there may be, like your rent may always be due on the first of the month, okay? So if you have a due date for the electrical or a due date for paying water or a due date for paying the rent, you can put that in. If you get paid by the month, so let's say up here, you only get paid once a month. Then, in figuring your money, you're going to have to figure out how much do you spend in a month? Because if the money only comes in once a month, you're going to have to tell your money where to go for the whole month. That is very hard for Kenyans. Many of you get paid, some people get paid every 2 weeks. If you get paid every 2 weeks, then you can budget for every 2 weeks. Some of you get paid every week, and that's really much easier to manage. For this reason, if you know that you're going to get paid by the week, then you can figure how much food do I eat in a week? How much am I having to pay for these things in a week? Be sure you break it down that way. So for instance, let's say Jessica goes and gets her hair done once a month. And let's say when she goes and gets her hair done, it's 800 shillings. Okay. So she's going to get her hair done one time a month for 800 shillings. But her money is coming in and she's budgeting every week. So is she budgeting 800 a week? No, because there's 4 weeks in a month, she can put 200 shillings in her envelope. And at the end of the month, when she's going to the salon, there's 800 in there. You see? So it depends on how you have to pay for things. I think it's much easier to do on a weekly basis. The problem with budgeting for a month is that, and you've seen it here in Nairobi, the streets are full of the cars the first week of the month. And as the month goes on, there's fewer and fewer cars on the road. Why? Well, because people they did not make a budget. They spent all their money at the first of the month. Now, when it's the end of the month, they don't have any money for their fuel, for their car. Or maybe they've eaten all the food. So now what are we going to do? Fast all week because there's no food in the house? So you've got to break it down. If you're budgeting for a month, then you're going to have to plan this divided into 4 weeks. Don't spend all your food money week 1. What are you going to eat week 2, 3, and 4? Or your transport. Maybe it costs you $2,000 a month in transport. Well, divide that by 4. Of course, you have to look at the calendar and be sure it's not a 5-week month. If it's a 5-week month, you're going to have to divide by 5. But let's say it's a 4-week month, then I'm going to go 4 into 2,000. So I need $500 a week for my budget. Now, I had on here about, no, let's go back to here, about the envelope method. Here is the easiest way to do a budget. I said earlier that there's apps on the phones, or you could even keep a paper list of how much you're spending. But remember, bookkeeping, writing down what you did spend, is not the same as budgeting. Bookkeeping and writing down what you did spend is the past. Budgeting is telling your money where to go in the future. And so even if you're keeping your records on your phone, that's only showing where your money went. And that's a good thing to know, but it's not the same thing as budgeting. Are you with me? Okay. What I have found and what people, financial advisors around the world encourage you to do, especially if you're just learning and just getting started with a budget, is the envelope method. What you do is for every one of those categories on your piece of paper, some of them you may not have, but the ones that you do have, the items that you do have to pay for, you take an envelope and you write the name of it. Here's my budget for my food. Here's what I have to spend on school fees. Here's my money for God. Here's the toiletries. Here's what I spend on transport. Here's for the phone. Here's that money for family. Here's the gifts. I've got birthday gifts I have to get. I've got Christmas gifts I want to buy. Here's my savings. Here's clothes, NHIF, offerings. And what did I drop? Hair. Yes, hair. So, you have these envelopes. So, let's say Mercy J gets paid. In fact, Mercy J did get paid today. So, Mercy J gets paid. And she has her envelopes. Now, remember, this method only works if you do it. It doesn't work if it's just a nice idea in your head. If she still takes all of her money that she got paid this morning and she puts it in her pocket, it is just going to go. It's just going to go. But if she goes back to her room and she looks at her budget and she says, okay, this is how much I'm giving in offerings. Here's how much I'm going to put in clothes. And she puts her money in here. Then, we talked about spending. It's really easy. Let's say that she put $500 in clothes. And this week, when she goes to the market to buy food, she sees a dress that she loves. And she says, let's see, how much money do I have in my clothes? I've got $500. But the dress is $1,000. So Mercy, you're going to have a decision. You are either going to have to wait until you have 1,000 shillings in here, or you might decide, you know what? I have got lots of money in my savings, and I'm not too worried about it. I've got so much money in here, I can take some more money out to buy that dress. And I've still got money in here. She could do that. But that way, when you need the money, whether it's for hair or NHIF or whatever you need, when you need it, it's here. If you want to buy something and it's not here, that's at least a warning flag, okay? If it's not a stop sign, it at least is a warning flag going, can you really afford this? Do you need to save more money? Do you need to work more hours? How are you going to get it? Because if the envelope is empty, you don't do it, okay? That's the best way to do it. If the money is in here, you have already thought about it. You have already prayed about it. You have already budgeted it. You are being a manager of your money. You're being a good steward of your money. You're following this plan. You have put the money in here when you got paid. And now that it's time to pay NHIF, there it is. Especially if you've been putting it in, like I said, NHIF is $500 a month. But you don't, if you're getting paid by the week and you're budgeting by the week, then what you're going to be doing is you're going to be putting $125 in here every week. And then at the end of the month, you've got the $500 because you put $125 in week 1. You put $125 in week 2. You put $125 in week 3. You put $125 in week 4. Now, it's the first of the month. I think NHIF has to be paid before the 8th or 9th of the month. You look in your envelope, there it is. You can go pay it. Is that making sense?
Yes.
Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is I'm going to give you envelopes for you to write down your categories, the things that you spend money on. Because you may spend money on these, you may have other things, whatever you've written. In fact, that's why you have blank spaces in your budget, so that if there are things that you have to buy that are not on here, well, you need to add that to your budget. So be sure you list all your income, all your sources of income. If you're still in school and somebody gives you pocket money every week, that's income. Again, decide if you're going to plan for each week or a month at a time. You know, you can plan to give, but remember the scripture in the Bible that says you have to provide for your own household first. There are people here in Kenya that give away their money, and then the children don't have food. They're not providing for their own family. There are men who go out and spend all their money on cigarettes and beer, and the wife and kids are hungry at home. So when the envelope is empty, you can't spend what you don't have. You don't go and borrow money from M-Pesa. You don't go and borrow money from those bad people who are going to come to break your leg if you don't pay them. Okay, final questions. I've talked about a lot of things, even today. We've talked about wealth and inheritance and marriage and money and budgeting. So anything you have a question on, that we covered today or last time on this whole idea of managing money, budgeting money, anything that comes to mind? Okay, let me just end by encouraging you that any money you have has been provided for you from God. But you have to be a good steward. You have to be a good steward. So tell your money where to go. Tell your money where to go. And then your needs will be taken care of. You'll even have money that can be a blessing to others so that you can give extra offerings. You can give money to your family. You can give gifts. You can be a blessing because you know how to handle the money that God has blessed you with. Compared to spiritual topics, we often think of money as being a very fleshly or carnal subject and not important. But Lord, your word has so many scriptures about money, more scriptures than about heaven. Because Lord, you do test our heart. You test to see what kind of person we are, what kind of values we have in our heart, whether we can be trusted, whether we're going to trust you, what we're going to spend our money on. Because really, what we spend our money on really does show what we value. So Lord, I just pray that you would speak to each heart, just helping to underline this whole thing and show us, Lord, each of us have problems in this area, in one area or another. One person may be struggling about telling the truth. Somebody else may be struggling with tithing. Somebody else may be struggling with paying their taxes. Somebody else may struggle with just having a plan and even beginning to know where the money should be spent. So Lord, in whatever area we each have a problem when it comes to money, Lord, I just pray that you would show us, help us, that Lord, our commitment would be so that when we stand before you, you say, well done, good and faithful servant. That we have managed our money, that we have used the money that you've given us, not only for ourselves, but Lord, to be a blessing. And it has flowed out of our relationship with you. We thank you and we praise you in Jesus' name. Amen.